interest of all of us. And it really, I mean, you chose to run to be public servants, and if you really don't want to listen to our concerns, don't show up like Ms. Holchi. I'll sit in her seat. I mean, it doesn't matter anyway, because the way she votes and the way I vote will probably be ignored equally. I want you to do something. The plywood box around the plywood box on Edgewater Place, it brings the value of everybody's home down. It brings the value of homes down 5 to 10%. It's not working. The town should raise that house and attach a lien to the property. I don't know who's in charge. I don't know who owns it. It looks like they have a different sign on it now, but it's a dump. And the guys who were working next door, they were doing some sort of construction work. They were going into the property and they were using it as a public urinal. And it's disgusting. People they walk their dogs there, they don't pick stuff up, and everything is dumped on the inside. And it's hidden by this plywood, and it's got this chain link fence on top of it. And I'm going to repeat it every week until something is done about it, because it's horrendous. It's across the street from the church. It's on a block where I own a home, and I don't want it. I want it taken care of. If it was on any one of your blocks next to your homes, I think you wouldn't like it in Glen Rock or Leonia or wherever it is that you enjoy your lifestyle. I don't want it in my neighborhood. And also, we need to have something done on our block. You have to talk to public service, because if that road isn't paved, at least the holes, on their half before the winter, then we're going to have trouble with our equipment. Then we're going to have to go out and buy new equipment. So before we run into, I like preventative stuff. I don't want to wait until there's a problem and then we have to, spend more money on it. They owe us paving at least on half the road. I wish that they would, honor their commitment, because we're only going to run into future trouble. And if it's anything like last winter, which I'm praying it's not, because so far so good, we're going to have a huge amount of trouble. Okay?
No, thank you.
Do you have any more time?
We have a minute left.
Okay, I'm just going to stand here and think of something. Okay, thank you.
Thanks. Anyone else wishing to hear it? Hearing none, I close the open part of the meeting. All right, do you guys want to respond to some of the questions you were asked?
I think there's only a few for me, but in terms of, I know one of the questions got raised about the proposal that is submitted to you for tonight for $103,000. What that proposal includes is the design, the permitting, the waterfront development permit amendment, and the complete design plans and specs for my firm, Negley Engineering, to do that. Terms environmental work separately with the borough, so he can answer the questions that were thrown at him. Another question that came up, I think at least twice that I have recorded, was the estimated cost of the project. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to give you, a couple ranges, and I just ask that you keep it in mind, because there was some discussions about synthetic turf fields versus all grass fields. Just that one decision, just so you can put it in a magnitude, that could be a $2 million difference. Okay, $2 million more for synthetic turf. Could be as much as that, depending on
The short-term cost.
the short-term cost, right? So, when I give numbers, I just want everybody to understand that they could fluctuate significantly. Right now, our preliminary numbers are indicating a project somewhere between $8 and $10 million with the remediation and removal of some materials plus the amenity construction. So what we're going to be doing is coming back and working that number back and trying to, again, make some of the decisions as you go through the process to try to limit the costs. But that was the numbers that we were at this point in time, but they're very, very preliminarily done. And again, you will have input on where those numbers go. And in terms of just one other question that's really not me, but it was asked of both of us, was were we aware of that the site had historic fill on from River Road down to the river? I know it was stated in your report tonight that was the case, that the entire area had been filled at the time. So I was under the understanding that was historic fill. With that, I think all the other questions were for
Could I just ask one thing, that the tide changes and the, possibility of, the river overflowing into the field, do you have any response to that, or?
I don't, he doesn't.
Okay, I'm sorry.
One other thing for me, and then I'm gonna let him answer the rest. In terms of the maps and the presentations, the only map that we've been working on was the one that's been always prepared. I don't have another map out of the amenities, but I'd be happy to give you copies of the ones that we've been circulating several times, which was the master plan that was approved by the governing body. So in terms of what we're proposing for the amenities, nothing, excuse me, has changed from that master plan. So all the fields are in the exact same location, the parks, the tennis courts, the walkways, everything was in accordance with the master plan. When we get engaged for the next phase, we'd be happy to present any other construction documents. That's the only plan that I would have. So.
I can get to the water. I'll start with the simple stuff. I think I had given my qualifications. I own the company, Terms Environmental Services. I'm the president and founder. As mentioned, LSRP stands for Licensed Site Remediation Professional. I think I mentioned that. My qualifications as a licensed site remediation professional in the state of New Jersey, that is the highest qualification that the DEP licenses in the state of New Jersey. Also, in order to get that license, you have to have certain educational background. If you have an environmental science degree as a Bachelor of Arts, you're not even eligible for that certification. So I think if you look at, website aside, I don't know which projects are on the website. I'd be happy to give, mayor and council all of my qualifications, resumes, whatever you want on that end. As far as the presentation, I was asked to give a summary, which I did. We have a summary report. We do have some, diagrams showing where the figures, where the samples were collected. I'd be happy to put that into, we need to put it into a final form at some point as part of this bid package. So that's going to happen. So, we can provide that when the council, requests it. Be happy to provide that. The groundwater issue. The sampling that we're talking about, first of all, the 7 feet, as I had mentioned, that's the tar-like material. That's a viscous type material. That's not the PCBs. I think I stated that the PCBs extended to 2.5 feet, so they are on the surface. The 7 feet is the tar-like material that is some kind of petroleum-based material which extends down to the water table. The reason to get that out is because it could impact the groundwater in a negative way if you leave it in there, if it hasn't potentially already. The tidal influence has nothing to do with the surface of this site. How much water is moving past the site? It could impact the groundwater, absolutely. There's some impact that could happen to the groundwater, flushing effects and whatnot. We will have to put some monitoring wells in after the site is redone. But the DEP regulations don't require the person responsible for the site to remediate the groundwater if it's related to historic fill, if they did not put the historic fill there. And these are all part of the, quote, this is the regulation at 726E, NJAC 726E, technical requirements for the remediation of contaminated sites. That's where this is found. That's so, if anybody wants the citation, again, that'll be in the final report. But these are the regulations that the DEP has put into place. We're following the regulations. Where we have a gray area of the regulation where it doesn't specifically speak to whether or not we have to take 4 samples or 6 samples, we're using our professional judgment, and we're also looking to get concurrence from the DEP where these gray areas exist through their technical consultation service that they've put in place for LSRPs who are now in control of oversight of the actual investigation and remediations of the site. I'm not sure. There was a lot of general questions about that I didn't provide specifics as far as
Let
the
me ask one that it was mentioned about the tennis courts and the previous work that was done maybe 8 years ago, 10 years ago. Why all of a sudden do we get the hit now with this
I was brought in November of 2010. That was the first I probably set foot, maybe I was on the park at some point in the past, but not in the capacity of doing any testing, obviously. In 2010, we were asked, because the DEP required it as part of the testing associated with the waterfront walkway, that test be conducted of the fill.
Could I ask Mike or yourself, would it be safe to say that the standards have changed in the last so many years that maybe 10 years or 8 years ago it would have passed, and now within the last 3 years it's changed, or?
You know, I'm not familiar with what Short Palma had in terms of testing, or what they did, or where they tested it. So, you know, I'm not familiar with what they supplied to the governing body back then. All I can tell you is some of the regulations have changed slightly, but not in that area, I don't think.
Well, actually, in 2008, I don't know, I've not seen any of that testing. I don't know what the results are. I don't know which compounds were tested for and which were at what levels. But the two of the compounds that we have in excess here, actually there's PCBs. The standard has gone from 0.49 parts per million on residential to 0.2 parts per million. So yes, it could have been 0.4 and it would have been okay, and now it's not. That happened in December of 2008. At the same time, the compounds which I've collectively called PAHs, we have several. Most of them, the standard was either 0.66 or 0.9. Those standards are now, for the 0.66, most of them are 0.2. Once again, you could have been at 0.5 and been below the then standards. In December of 2008 is when these changed. So you could have had a situation, I don't know what the numbers are, so I don't know which compounds were detected, but it is certainly possible that those compounds could have been below the standard at the time, but above the current standard, depending on what was found.
Just to give a little bit more information, when Short Palma did their original sampling, they did identify the entire site as being historic fill, an area of concern, and their recommendation was no further action, to do nothing else on site. When we went ahead and started preparing our plans for the second phase, which included the parking lot area and the restroom on the south side of the field, that's when Green Acres came up and said, you need to do your testing because we do not concur with what Short Palma said as no further action. Stephanie Santos, Naval Engineering.
She's the project manager, so she's reviewing.
That's pretty much it for
Mayor, I think there was just one more. I believe Mary had inquired about the soil around the community center. Knowing the elevation of the community center is higher than the field, and we had cordoned off the community center later on as a result of the additional testing. So if I have Mary's question right, Mary, you can chime in.
No,
What
I'm
are we
again.
doing up to the front door, I would say?
Yeah, I apologize, I forgot that question. We did some of our initial testing, starting with a full priority pollutant scan, which is a list, a pretty much comprehensive list that the DEP considers a comprehensive list of all type of compounds, which would include volatile organic compounds. It's the volatile organic compounds that volatilize and cause vapors, potentially. The PAH compounds, while they're hydrocarbons, they're actually what they call semi-volatile organic compounds. And as such, they don't volatilize. The DEP does not require any vapor testing in association with PAHs. They would if there were volatiles, but we didn't find any volatiles on the site. And again, the nature of the contamination, not knowing that, not having another area of concern. For instance, if there was a gas station on the site and there was gasoline contamination associated with some areas of the site, that would become a clear consideration for the building. But this is historic fill. We've characterized the contaminants at this point to contain PAH compounds, polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons, which are semi-volatile organics, which do not volatilize at a level that the DEP considers a concern for indoor vapors. So we have not tested there. Absent a reason to suspect that there's something under the building that isn't elsewhere on the site. And our understanding was there was historic fill, but it wasn't, I don't know that it was ever tested. I'm hearing that it was, but I've never seen any results. But I've heard that the fill extends to the road. Our testing indicates the fill extends to the road, and it indicates certain compounds are present throughout the fill, contaminated historic fill. And those are semi-volatiles and PCBs, none of which volatilize at a level that would get to that point. If there's a concern and want to test the indoor, it's certainly not a requirement based on the normal regulatory framework that we operate within, but it certainly could be tested if that's a concern. But it wouldn't be required to follow the regulations the way they're laid out and the way that they have been enforced over the years. There wouldn't be a requirement to do that testing.
My concern was that you piled there.
What's that, Mayor?
Once you pile, you bring the contaminants up. That whole building is on piles.
Again, the volatiles are, we don't have any evidence that suggests they're volatile organic compounds. So whether or not the piles have affected what's subgrade, there's no volatiles. So if you brought up PCBs or PAHs and they're under the building and it's capped, and that would be a protective remedy from the DEP's perspective, just like we're talking about clean fill. That would be a cap of the contaminated material. So hopefully that answers that.
All right. Thank you. Thanks for coming in.
Okay.
You applied for the summary, you didn't give us any details. I hope you come back and give us details. This is a positive insult to every citizen of Edgewater.
Thank you for
You
coming.
get a summary and no detail.
He's absolutely right. No details, that was
It's total insult to every citizen of Edgewater. It wasn't a Boston Pony show. It was a clean
Mr.
up-
Henning, please. Mr. Henning, please.
I'm talking to somebody here.
He's absolutely right.
Go somewhere.
All right, we have approval of minutes for the September 20th, 2011 special meeting and the December 5th, 2011 working close. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Do I have a second? Second. Roll call?
Councilman Doran? Councilman Monty?
Yes.
Councilman Bedell?
Yes.
Councilman Jordan?
Abstain.
And Councilwoman Rose? Yes.
No, we see the picture.
No, we have, baseball, instead of reporting on it later, we have receipt of RFQs. The committee that you appointed will be meeting next week. I'm sorry, this week, to review the RFQs received.
Next up, we have ordinance 1464, 2011, an ordinance of the Borough of Edgewater and the County of Bergen, New Jersey, providing for improvements to the municipal pool and for the Borough of Edgewater and appropriating $65,000. Therefore, I'm providing for the issuance of $61,750 in bonds or notes of this Borough of Edgewater to finance the same. I'd like to open it to the public on 1464, 2011 only. Valerie.
Valerie Bordino, 16 Hudson Terrace. That money is to provide a lift for a handicap. Is it possible instead of a lift, since the pool is only like 2 feet deep, to do an incline, a ramp? Like just where, if you ever go to a pool, they always have one section where you can just walk in for people like me who don't like to just jump in. Instead, I would think that'd be less expensive than a lift, which is like 2 feet.
Mayor, the engineer had reviewed that option. Those were the two options, was a ramp or the lift. And it was based on the review that the lift would be less expensive than the ramp due to all the concrete work that would be needed for the interior ramp.
But,
So that's what-
and talking though, for the long term though, the lift spray, the lifts, maintenance, so it's just an idea. And I just want to take 1 second to say that the community center's Santa breakfast was fantastic, and the staff did a fantastic job. I forgot to say that. Thank you.
Mr. Henry?
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to ask you one question. Where will this pool get its water from? From the expensive water costs in Edgewater? It comes into Edgewater so much a gallon, whatever, or from the polluted Hudson River?
Mr. Henry, it's in regards to ordinance 1464, 2011, the swimming pool levy.
Where will the water come from for that pool?
United Water.
It won't be the Hudson River.
No.
Thank you very much.
Anyone else wish to be heard? Hearing now, I'll close the open for 1464, 2011. Do I have an introduction?
I need to read it. Whereas an ordinance of the Borough of Edgewater, the County of Bergen, New Jersey, providing for improvements to the municipal pool in and for the Borough of Edgewater, and appropriating $65,000 therefore, and providing for the issuance of $61,750 in bonds or notes of the Borough of Edgewater financing is hereby adopted. Introduction.
I'll introduce it.
I'll second if it's required by the state.
We have a discussion? Discussion, roll call.
Councilman Doran? Yes. Councilman Monti?
Yes.
Councilman Brightfeld?
Yes.
Councilman Jordan?
Yes.
Councilwoman Rose?
Yes.
Motion passes.
All right, next up is 1465, 2011, an ordinance of the Borough of Edgewater and County of Bergen, New Jersey, providing for acquisition of the marina dredge and appropriating $450,000 in bonds or notes of the Borough of Edgewater to finance the cost thereof. I'd like to open the meeting to the public on 1465, 2011. Dennis?
I'm wondering if we, I think you probably have looked into this, but are we trying to maybe partner with somebody else that might have a dredge, like up the river or elsewhere? Or this is a fairly expensive piece of equipment. I don't know how portable it is, but it seems to me like it gets limited use, and then it gets stored for a long period of time, hopefully. So are we looking into getting other people who might have temporary use for it as we do?
You know, what, I believe that was discussed, possibly looking north, I believe they used the same piece of equipment. But I do know that we're gonna need it for like a 12-month program to maintain the marina. It's a constant issue that
So we're gonna do ongoing maintenance, basically, to keep it at bay.
Yes.
Yeah. But just the same, there's gonna be periods of time when it's not being used. And
Sure, yeah, share with
So I think
another-
it'd be well worthwhile to look into it. It might not even be necessarily on this river, but, over in the Agnes second. Well, who knows where else, but I think it's worthwhile to look.
All right. Have we done it to the over?
Yes, Mayor. The most local piece of equipment would be utilized during the same periods of time that the borough would need it. And the more distanced piece of equipment is, although it achieves the same purpose, it's a different design which takes up a considerable amount of room, and the maneuverability is limited. That's called a crane dredge, and there's essentially this piece in the front that extends beyond the actual dredge barge itself. So those are some of the issues when it was evaluated as to whether or not it should be rented or purchased, and the conclusion was that due to the accessibility of having a machine on hand when it's needed, it'll be here.
So basically, you have looked into it, you evaluated both pros and cons, and you feel like this is the most cost-efficient, practical way of doing it. All right, thank you.
Valerie?
Valerie Martinez, 16 Hudson a lot of money to spend for this equipment for the marina, and I think the marina is a worthy cause. Excuse me. But one of the problems with the silting in is exasperated by the fact of the ferry with the wakes and the, you know, you would think that the rotor would actually help with the silt, but it doesn't. It impacts the marina more. So if you're going to have a ferry, I would suggest that you sit down like business people and come up with a plan to make the ferry economically feasible, make it worthwhile having. Not a strain, because it's really been draining the taxpayers' pockets. You're providing a free ferry transportation. I travel to the city. I have to pay to get to the city. I don't understand why people are getting door-to-door service at no cost to them. Actually, it is a cost to the rest of us, because we're subsidizing that transportation. They should at least pay $1, something towards it, towards the fuel. You're paying full-time bus drivers now who sit there half of the time waiting for their rounds, because I see them every morning sitting up on the north end waiting for the time for them to do their rounds to pick up people. It should operate on the weekends. It should operate later. I don't understand why you're not making, you know, and I understand you have to work with the ferry operator, but come on, let it start making money. Thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Henry.
Thank you, Mayor. Mayor, I couldn't be more emphatic in my total protest against this particular ordinance. $450,000 in bonds and notes. To what? To dredge the marina. I'm a citizen of Edgewater that's been granted, as you know, you have in your letter there, access to open acres here, 50 acres. That's what you got, called deed 2039, and he's got it right there, since 1939. And this is going to cost me additional monies for a situation that I have zero benefit and total discrimination. I have a sailboat with a keel. It's about 7 feet deep. And I could have used the colony shoreline if you're Mr. Codermo and you're attorney and you people here hadn't permitted all those trespassings on this property of the citizens of Edgewater, this 50 open acres. You've tolerated, you have not done anything to cause their removal, so there's no access for me to the 50 acres. Now you want to tax me. What?
Dredge machine.
Dredging machine. Now you want to, I have to pay taxes through the colony. So this is a double jeopardy for me. I have to pay in order to deepen the water for a marina that I'm not allowed to use. People from out of town can use it if they can afford to use it. I can't use it. And therefore, I think I have a most legitimate, total objection to this for the discrimination that it imposes upon me and others. Thank you. When are you going to get back on your answer to me?
There's a fund for the marina that would be paying for this, and if we have a successful marina with water, we have plenty of boats there to make the money to pay for it. So
How about me? Can I use it?
if you want to rent a slip down there, I'm sure.
I don't want to pay extra money. I used to have access and would have access now if you hadn't condoned the trespassing. You're conspiring in that.
Mary?
Mary Hogan, 606 on Avenue. I hope, have looked into what it is that it constitutes to run a dredging machine. I presume that there's licensing that's required. The person that's running the dredging machine. Also, I know when Mr. Demetrakis, who previously owned the marina, wanted to dredge and deposit the silt upland, there was very expensive testing that had to be done as to whether the silt was clean enough to deposit it upland. Since we've taken over the marina, the silt depositing cap that was out in the ocean has been closed and capped, and you can't deposit there anymore. So the question that I have is, among other things, what are you gonna do with the silt? Once you get this dredging machine, it's illegal for you to throw it back into the river, that's not allowed. So you have to take it out. Do we know that, are we gonna have to test? How many times are we gonna have to test for this dredging? You're saying we're doing it, all year round. How long does a dredging, testing, last for? But I hope this is all stuff you looked into before you spent $450,000 of the public's money. Also, I was concerned as to the contamination that now may be in the silt from the dredging of GE upriver. Since we are on a tidal basin and the water comes in and the water goes out. And from what I understood when we did the work on the marina, you were limited as to the time that you could do that work because of the spawning and the things going up. So it's not going to be 12 months a year. It can't be.
Right, you're right.
So you can't, so this is going to be a limited time that you can use this equipment. You're going to have to pay for people to be licensed to run it. And now you're going to have to pay, you can't say, well, we're only going to pay you that salary for 4 months when you're doing the dredging, and then I don't think that you would do that. Most people wouldn't agree to do that if they've gone for the licensing. You're going to have to pay them all year round for that license if it's someone within the town that we pay. And so now you're talking $450,000, but we're really talking about like $4 or $5 million, I would think, when we get around to it. And that is so totally absurd in terms of, what you're getting at this point. As far as I can see, you have nothing in place yet. It's just a machine that's been offered and you think it's a good deal and you buy it. And later we'll figure it out. Because when we bought the marina, we bought the tug that was there. We bought the tug, paid extra money for it, because part of what they did was to run the tug throughout the marina, which would, actually push the silt
Are you
down.
suggesting we push the mud back into the river?
No, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that we spent extra money on that because this is what was done, and now suddenly the tug, you couldn't use it.
Well, I'm sure other marinas, private marinas are doing just that, but as a public marina, I don't think it would be wise.
No,
for us
we're
to
not
start
allowed to
pushing
do
mud.
that, but what I'm saying is, in terms of what we pay to train someone, to license someone, to insure someone to do this, I don't think it's worth it for us to do it. I would think that there are companies out there that probably do it at a much better rate in terms of us having them come in however many months a year we can do it, as opposed to us owning a piece of dredging equipment, paying someone to have a dredging license for 24 months a year, and then them not being able to use it. I don't think that this is necessarily a good idea. And as Dennis pointed out, there's got to be other marinas around here that has dredging equipment. There has to be. And licensed people that, run it if they own their own equipment. All of New York City has all these marinas and stuff. They must do something. The other thing is I've heard nothing from this mayor and council approaching the Army Corps of Engineers to reinstate and continue to use the dredging of the channel. This is half our problem. Since they don't dredge the channel and keep the channel deep enough, all the silt comes to our side of the river. So why aren't we there, along with all the other towns on this side of the river, petitioning the Army Corps of Engineers to again begin dredging the river for the channel, so that the channel stops pushing toward the New York side and leaving us with all the silt. Thank you.
Anyone else wish to be heard? Kate?
You said you'd get back to me, Mayor. When will that be? I'm waiting.
Well, in light of what Mary said, and I'm not going to reiterate, but in conjunction with the fact that our bond rating was just lowered and our interest rates will go up if we do borrow money at this time, why don't we take the time to investigate a little bit and see what's available around us before we jump into, in the record, I think you said that, we have to make home improvements, but sometimes we can't make those home improvements immediately because we don't have the money in the bank. I like to save up when I make a home improvement or liquidate an asset so I can pay for it and not spread it out over time to just save money. And since our interest rates are going to go up, I think we should take a little bit of time before we make another expenditure and take everything that Mary said into consideration. I mean, just because something is offered, doesn't mean it's the greatest deal in the world. I'd say let's leave it to the professionals. And did I read somewhere that we got money for the hurricane to clean the marina? So can we use that money to hire some professionals until we can make a better decision? Just give us a chance to, to get our bearings before we jump into something, and then we're left with a piece of equipment that maybe we can't continually operate and not make a profit off of. Just, something to think about.
Michael?
Good evening, Mike Henwood, 1250, my address? 1203 River Road, that's Robert. Just, you guys don't get to discuss this until you get to the next part of it, when you close it down. But just so everyone knows, because I was part of the committee, if you will, I mean, this is a long process we went through. And maybe it's not appropriate for me to come from this position, but my understanding is that there's been a lot of work that's gone into this. There's been several meetings with different options, borrowing from borough down south, to people on the river, to people right upriver from us, to looking at different pieces of equipment. Just to answer, no, there is no licensing. It's a learning curve for the gentleman that works there for the DPW. He will run the equipment. We will go from probably a 60% slip rate to 100% slip rate. My understanding, the bond is a little bit different in the sense that it's self-liquidating because the revenue costs go to pay it off, which we will get with the additional 100% occupancy. So just overall, there's a lot. It's not just a whim of an idea. We're going to spend $450 million, $450,000. There's a lot of work that's gone into this, and I appreciate the fact that you have done it, and I just think it should be mentioned. Thanks.
Where are you putting this
Anyone else
soil?
wish to be heard? Close on 1465, 2011.
Whereas the ordinance of the Borough of Edgewater in the County of Bergen, New Jersey, providing for acquisition of a marina dredge and appropriating $450,000 in bonds or notes of the Borough of Edgewater to finance the costs thereof is hereby adopted.
I'll second it.
Introduced by Councilman Jordan and seconded by Councilman Rebecca.
Discussion?
I'd like to say that we have spent a lot of time and we have looked at various options. And because of the timeliness as to when you can dredge, and the fact that the marina will only be profitable if we can keep the dredge, and the fact that FEMA will not allow us to spend any of the money on self-dredging or equipment. It will only allow us to hire a company to clean up from the results of the hurricane. I think that is a crazy decision on the part of FEMA, but that is out of our control. It is a lovely marina. We can make it much more profitable. We need to take control of it ourselves, and therefore, that's why I think this is a good resolution.
If I can add to that, we fought tooth and nail against FEMA. We brought them down here. We had several meetings. We called the Congressman's office. We asked them for support to try to see if we can use this $750,000 that we received from FEMA to buy our own equipment rather than dredging. The dredging that we're going to do with the $750,000 is not going to make an impact on the marina at all. It's going to make very little impact. So $750,000 is not going to do much to resolve the issue that we have with the marina. But the amount of money that we're going to be spending on that equipment is going to be an investment that we can use ongoing through the summer to ensure that it doesn't accumulate.
Also, I do think Mary has a very good point on behalf of the past. The Army Corps of Engineers has got to go to the channel. And perhaps we can write another letter to the Army Corps of Engineers asking that they please take into consideration.
One of our objectives is to look at where we can generate new revenue.